Aloha. I'm Congressman Ed Case, home from Washington, D.C. for a week of working in my district. And today we're going to do another segment of our Cruisin with Congressman Case, where we get out and about with folks that are making a difference in our community, folks that are involved in many of the programs and projects that I'm involved with back in D.C. And my goal, number one, is to highlight all of the great work going on the many difficult issues that we're facing throughout our country and our state. But also, of course, for me, this is about overseeing the federal funding that is going into supporting these programs and really developing the partnerships that make my job a lot easier when I'm in DC. And so today, I've got a great guest. We are with Anton Krucky, who is the director of the City and County of Honolulu's Office of Community Development.
Community Services.
Community Services. Anton, aloha. Good to have you here.
Congressman.
Okay, well, we're here at the Office of Community Services headquarters at Kapalama Hale. Well, we're not in Kapalama, so I haven't figured that one out yet, but we're in Kalihi Palama or Iwilei. We're not sure which one, but we're right on Dillingham Boulevard. Busy morning, and we're going to go out and cruise the programs that Anton supervises and talk stories. So just briefly, Anton, just tell us what does the Office of Community Services do within the City and County of Honolulu?
I think for the city and county, the best way to describe it is we're the primary source of getting funding to service providers. So we have 5 divisions. We deal with the elderly. We deal with the Section 8 voucher programs that you have. That's another division. Section
8 voucher programs are the federal government's ability and a primary area of trying to assist with affordable housing. So we help people with Section 8, which is a reference to the federal law, with their rent.
Yeah, so we also do the CDBG. We have a division that handles that, and we'll be going to some of the places where they've done today. We also have...
And excuse me just a second, sure. I'm going to translate as we go along. So CDBG is Community Development Block Grants, and that's the federal government's major way for a long time now of trying to assist communities where we provide block grants in particular areas, and then we let communities, primarily state and county governments, but also nonprofits, decide exactly how they want to apply those CDBG funds to their communities. We're going to go check out some CDBG projects.
Yeah, and during the last 2 years also, just with all the CARES money and everything we're trying to do with COVID, there's been a whole other influx of funds, and that group handles that. We also do the grants and aid, which are to service providers from city dollars that we give, right? And then we also have Work Hawaii. A lot of people don't know we have that program, which is also trying to retrain, get people back to work, and also rent to work and things like that. So we'll get a chance to talk about all those programs. They're very exciting.
How many people in your office?
We have 167 people in our office right now. We've got a lot of openings too, so look us up.
Okay, and so these folks are all city employees?
Yes, they're under contract or they're civil service workers.
Okay, and are they all at Kapalama Hale here? Or?
No, we have 4 different locations. We have a service center out in Kapolei. We have 2 locations downtown, and also in the Dole Cannery we have a location. So we're pretty spread out.
Okay, well, that's a quick overview of what we're going to do today. We'll get to know Anton a little bit. Personally, he's got a very interesting life story called the public service later in his career. And we're going to go check out some of the programs, and I'm going to try to understand how our federal dollars are going out there on the ground, both generally and, as Anton already mentioned, for COVID-19 emergency assistance. Oh wow, these guys are getting high tech. Yeah. They just put in that one. That's I guess they want to see where we're going because.
Interesting.
Yeah. So. Where are we going? We're going
to follow these guys. We're going to the Honu location out at K.
Better to go out that way? Oh, we're going to follow them so they know where we're going.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So bottom line, these cameras are on all the time. So,
okay.
You know, whatever we do and whatever we say is on tape, but we will be very judicious if we sit here and make a mistake, but I don't worry about it too much anymore. I figure I am who I am.
Yep. And we've known each other for a long time, so
yeah.
So we're going to follow them.
Yeah. All right. Fine day to go out there and do a cruising segment.
nice taking care of the Planet Prius. I've got my old Toyota here. This is a 2005 Toyota. I can't give it up.
Huh.
I'm at the cost, the absolute loss of cost benefit ratio now on it, where I'm probably spending more than it's worth. So the next major one is going to be to the Kidney Foundation.
Yep, I've done that. I have a Prius too. I got one of the first ones, electric ones, that were delivered to the island. So they'll wait for us.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's Anton, if I can, we're cruising down Alakawa Street right now to the Honu project. But before we get there to check out your first project, let's just talk a little bit about you. Who are you? You know, where are you from? How'd you get to where you're working today?
Well, first off, you know, I'm very proud to be part Hawaiian. That's my background. My father was in the U.S. Navy. He came out here as a sailor and was on board the USS Preble. And there he met my mom, who was a nurse at Queens.
Oh, wow. And where's your father from?
He was in Wisconsin. And then he was actually in the Battle of Pearl Harbor. So he experienced that. And it was interesting to him tell the stories of that and the rest of the Pacific during World War II. He was an interesting guy in the fact that he was a very good storyteller. But, you know, when he told me stories when I was 8, when I was 30, you know, if there were 8 ships in the battle, there were still 8 ships in the battle. The stories didn't grow over time. So anyway, he went to Japan during the Korean conflict. And so I was actually born in Japan. He got transferred back to Washington, D.C.
You were born at the naval base there?
Yeah, well, in the hospital in Tokyo, but then we lived in Yokosuka at the naval base. Right. Very
and
good.
So Anton Krucky, what ethnicity is that name?
That's Austrian.
Austrian.
Yeah.
Okay, so your family on your father's side goes back to Austria.
Yep.
And then
my
came
mom's
from
side
Austria to the United States and settled in Wisconsin?
Yeah, during all the wars and stuff in Austria, I guess they had some prominence had to flee, and then they ended up on a farm in Wisconsin over time.
Oh. Okay, so your father is in the Navy. He's here. He meets your mother, a nurse at Queens. What's your mother's?
Well, she's part Scottish. Her last name was Chalmers. Her on the Hawaiian side, she really was from 2 Hawaiian families. One was Olelo, and the other Kunia, and she was from the Big Island.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's half Hawaiian.
I'm liking her.
What's that?
I'm liking her. I'm from the Big Island too, although I'm not Hawaiian.
She went to Hilo High.
Oh.
Yeah. All that. So. Yeah. So you know.
She's from Hilo.
What's that?
Is she from Hilo?
Well, on the Hamakua coast there.
Oh, I see.
So. That side of the island. So. Yeah.
So she's part of what we used to call in Hilo the Scotch Coast.
Yes. Yeah.
The Scotch Coast, which was all of the Scottish that emigrated to work in the plantations like everybody else, and the Scottish were masters of mechanical machinery, and that heritage is still part of the heritage of the Hamakua Coast and the sugar industry for that matter. So.
Oh, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew Chalmers came over. In fact, he was a Luna on one of the plantations there.
Right. Okay.
So I go from Japan. My father gets transferred back to Washington, D.C. So I spent a lot of time growing up in the D.C. area. Went to the University of Maryland. But you know, in Washington, D.C., as you well know, there's a very active Hawaii State Society. And we were very active members of that. And I can't tell you how many times I dug emu pits back there and had the congressional delegation come to those events and enjoy those.
There's a famous story about the emu pit. I don't know if you ever heard this story, but I've got to pause to tell you this. So the stones in the emu pit, of course, for the proper emu, you have to have the right stones. If you just, and you can't use the mainland stones, they fracture. They're just not what you need. Even the stones here, you got to get them right. And so the legend of the Hawaii State Society and their annual luau in Washington, D.C. is that those stones were brought from Hawaii one by one with people returning to D.C. and they were assembled, and I don't know whether they're still in use as the collective stones, but the State Society is always very proud of their emu.
Yeah, I cleaned off those stones every time after the emu pit. My dad was the head of the emu pit, and he would get that thing so hot. Now and then we'd pull out a stone and it had flowed. you know, the lava had flown in it. So I didn't know exactly how they got there. That's a great story. But yeah, United Airlines was very active with Hawaii at the time, so they were very generous in bringing tea leaves and the banana stalks and everything out. So yeah, that was a big event.
Still going on.
Yeah.
Still an active community. Okay, so how'd you get from DC to Hawaii?
Well, I traveled around the country for a few years with a national fraternity, so I got to do that. And then IBM hired me in San Francisco. So I started my career with IBM in San Francisco as a system engineer, and then kind of rose through the ranks. And then 1986, IBM brought me out here to consolidate all the operations in the Pacific, and then I became the general manager for IBM Pacific. Located right there in the old Ossipoff building.
Yeah.
On this particular road.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I ran IBM here until 1999, and I'd adopted 2 children, and they were from the country of Moldova. Pretty active place right now.
Yeah, exactly, right next to Ukraine, or and quite in dangerous way.
Yes, very much so. We watch it in closely. And so the 2 boys I adopted, one of them had some serious medical issues, and I couldn't get up service here, unfortunately. So I searched the country for a place that would work, and there was a clinic up at the University of Hawaii, and the University of Washington. And so I moved up to Bainbridge Island, stayed there for a few years, and then, you know, I just worked with them. I'm very proud of them. They said that he'd never be able to leave home. And so we returned to Hawaii after we got through some initial sessions, and you know, he ended up graduating from high school, Kaiser High School here. He was on the wrestling team, the bowling team, and my other son was at Kaiser High School as well. And you know, now he's married, he's working on his own, he has a house up in Seattle, and you know, he's doing quite well. You know, you can't be more all you want is your children to be happy, but in addition to that, you know, for them to utilize what they have, and in his case, he's utilizing everything that God gave him. So I'm very proud of him.
That's a great story.
Yeah, Kyle's a great guy. So I ended up coming back here, and I founded a company called Tissue Genesis, and it's a biotech company.
What year was that?
That was 2003, I think. And so it was doing stem cell research. And we did a lot of work, and I visited you on the Hill about that with that company. And we were doing a lot of work with the U.S. Army, and the concept being is we were developing a technology that we could extract a person's stem cells from their own fat tissue, put it in a device, and an hour later in a syringe have their stem cells ready for use for whatever the applications. And there were some very good applications on the battlefield applications that would really help someone stay more healthy while being transported to a hospital, is what we were working on at the time. So we ran that here for quite a few years, ended up in the Tissue Genesis Tower in town. But then a group in Houston, family office, bought the company, and they ran it for a while here, and then they wanted to move it to Houston. And I didn't really want to go to Houston, so I stayed here, and then they've gone and sold parts of the company to other places. So
is the technology still going and still being applied?
It is, but not in Tissue Genesis. So they've sold the intellectual property, but the people working on it have gone with the intellectual property because they're the experts in the field.
Yeah, I forget whether I first started talking with you when I was in the state legislature with Act 221, where we were trying to jumpstart companies like Tissue Genesis in the state by focusing on a high-tech, high-development industry to create a local economy diversification, you know, great jobs. So I don't know, were you guys taking advantage of Act 221, or you're pretty much on the?
No, we did. Yeah, and it was very helpful.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, for about 16 years, you know, we employed at one time up to 40 people. You know, and they were good jobs. People that had left for the mainland, we got them to come back here. So I think it had a very positive effect. Plus you know, we have changed some people's lives with the technology medically. So that's very fulfilling. So after we sold Tissue Genesis, I started doing management consultant, and I was at HMSA, and I was their CIO for a while, and then they asked me to run their marketing operation, so I ran their marketing operation, and then came back as a CIO, and then retired. So there I am, I retire, and COVID hits.
Right? What year did you retire?
So what was COVID, 2020?
2020.
Yep, so I retired right at that December going into that. Had a lot of things planned, none of which, of course, occurred. And I in going through that, I watched Mayor Blangiardi's campaign and running for it. So when he got elected, I contacted him, and he contacted me. We were both trying to contact each other at the same time. And I said, I'd love to help you. And so that's how this journey started. He actually brought me down to his condominium and talked to me for a while. And he said, Anton, I know that you applied for the Department of Community Services, but I'd really like you to do something else for me for a while. And then he asked me to be the executive director of housing and homelessness, because there was only one person in that office, and it was a very important issue, and very prominent issue. And so he's saying, I'd like you to build up that office, get it running. So we did that, and we built it up. 6 people working in it, and then he asked me to come over and run community services, which really, Office of Housing is the policy office that kind of says what kind of things can we be doing, but the Department of Community Services is the funding office, because 90% of the funds that we administer are all just granting funds to service providers, from mostly federal government, state government, one $10 million slot from the city. So we use very little general funds. We mostly are processing and servicing and trying to get these public service funds out to the providers.
So when you say general funds, just to be clear, general funds are as they sound, like general monies provided by state or county government to their departments, and they are kind of far more all-encompassing, I suppose I would say, versus dedicated channels of funding that.
Yeah, I'd say general funds means it's the city and county money. So it's the money they get from property taxes and everything else that they run the business.
Right.
So everything else I'm doing, the sources of funds are not the city, right? They're coming from federal government, state government to deploy.
And they have a very specific, like in the federal government's side of things, for example, they have a specific purpose. I mean, we at the federal government level are trying to accomplish this in that department. So we have, as we already talked about, Section 8, or we have homelessness, or whatever the case might be.
Right. They're very specific, right? And so whether they're coming from HUD, or they're coming from the Treasury, or however they're being deployed, the rules are very specific, and we need to administer those funds in a manner that meet those guidelines, and we can report back on those guidelines. And so we're very diligent about that. That's why I have 5 different divisions doing different things with different sources of funds. Right?
And you can't commingle them really across those. I mean, some of them you can, because you have pretty broad discretion, but if the fund is for workforce development, that's where it's supposed to be going. It's not supposed to be going to
right. There's no commingling. The only way it would look like that is one service provider might get funds from 3 places because they're doing 3 different things.
Right.
And then we have to warn them not to commingle. Right? But yeah, you really don't do that. And that's part of the service we provide, is to make sure that stays straight, so the federal government can feel confident that as they oversee what we're doing, that the funds are being used in that way, and we pay attention to that closely.
Okay, so you got into city government with Mayor Blangiardi's administration, so early 2020?
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, you've never been in government before. I mean, you've been around government, obviously, but why government? Why not pursue other, as you were saying, opportunities in, the private sector, or perhaps education, or whatever else you were considering? What happened in terms of the why does a person like you, who has had such a successful career and who is, retired at least once, come back to work for government? That's the question.
Well, I appreciate that. I feel like all the time while I've been in business, I've been leading a public service life. I've been on, 20 different nonprofit boards. When I was with IBM, we teamed up with Olelo and started the Hawaii Job Training Center, a very successful job training program. So I've always felt that I could leverage what I was doing in the business world with the people I knew, the money I could raise, and then utilize that for the community. and that's sort of been my way of life all along. So this one, I looked at it, and I could have gone heavier into more boards and more things like that, but I just saw this as an opportunity. I saw what the mayor was trying to do, and I said, I think he needs some people around him that haven't always been in public service, maybe some fresh ideas to the problem. So I offered myself up.
And then why that particular office and that particular department? I mean, that's a tough department and a tough office. The challenges there are very difficult. They're very sometimes intractable.
Yeah.
They can be frustrating. I find personally that working in the area of housing and affordable housing and homelessness and helping people that just are really desperately in need for a variety of circumstances can be frustrating because it's hard to find the right answers. So why that particular one? Because it was hard?
Because the mayor asked me to do it.
Okay.
That was it. So when I jumped in, though,
he just said, hey, if you want to work for me, that's where I need you.
He said, I hope you'll come back. Right? But, you know him. He's not light on how he tries to convince you.
No, it's pretty straight up.
Yep.
It's not a whole bunch of subtlety there. Huh?
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it's a very clear expression of direction and of goals. So that's good.
And I think today we can talk about some of the fresh ideas we're applying to that, how it lays out in a logical manner to a very difficult problem.
So before we get to Honu, which is our first stop, I think. Let's just, how has it been? What has been your experience in government versus perhaps your expectations? Of course, you've had to do it during COVID, which is, it's in and of itself a very, I guess the word is unique, because not everybody comes into government for the first time at a position of responsibility like you have and goes straight into a true crisis that affects your constituency directly. So, the people that you work for, they were the ones that were impacted the most by in many ways, by COVID.
Well, one of the striking things about it is how people feel their access to you is their right. And I think when you're in business, you deal with people as customers, but in public service, they feel entitled to their access to you. And I understand that, and I get it. And it's just been, you have to learn how that. It's a different kind of rhythm, and you have to learn that rhythm. And I think that's one of the things I learned coming into it, has been that. The other, I think that people can disguise no in many different ways. And in business, what happens when you have an idea, you model it, and you model how it can work. And then after you finish the model itself will tell you why it doesn't work. Right? It'll have the aspects, no, we're not going to go into it, we're not going to invest in that. Whereas it seems to me, my experience has been in government, is people just, well, I have this idea, and then they tell you all the reasons why it won't work. And to get them to model it is difficult. And that's what I've tried to do. I say, let's if you say that, that's fine. That answer will come out in the model, so let's model it. And people kind of look at me, it's kind of funny on that one. And I said, but I'd like to do that because I think it's a positive way to look at things.
To organize, well, first of all, to agree on what the problem is and what the goal is.
Yeah.
And then to break it down into the steps that have to be taken and achieved in order to get to the result.
Right.
And I'm like you. I've had a career in both business and in government. And so in my business career, I've been a lawyer consulting to companies and people like you, and I was in the business world in the C-suite, as we say, myself. And so I'm used to thinking that way. And I apply that to my government thinking. However, it sometimes people don't always understand what I'm trying to do, by saying, okay, well, let's just step back, and they want to just go right to what the problem is and what the solution is. And of course, that's the solution. And if we just do this, we're going to get there. And I say, well, if we do that, then this is going to happen. And that's not the track we want to go on. So let's break it down and go and get there. And I think that is can be a frustration of government because government doesn't think that way.
No, they don't.
Okay, let's go figure out what we're doing here.
Kehi Lagoon.
Yes.
We're right under the rail project. You can see that right there. A rail is coming into from the airport to Middle Street, and we are, been down here many times for festivals, etc. And now let's talk about Honu. And I see you have a team here, so maybe we should let them explain it, if that's okay. Aloha. How are you? I will put on my mask and get all nice and official. Hi,
Nice to meet
Ed
you.
Case.
I'm Lena.
Hi, Lena. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
And this is
Hi.
All right.
Aloha.
Nice to meet
How are you? Hi. Hey, how's
This
it?
is the star of our
How are you?
program.
Aloha.
Nice to meet you.
Hi,
Hi, Ashley. Nice
Ed
to meet
Case.
you.
So, fair warning. First of all, we're taping all of this. I think you all know that. What I do is this is a segment I do called Cruising with Congressman Case, where when I'm home, I'll team up with somebody in the community, sometimes elected officials, sometimes others, and we'll just drive around, talk stories, see things. For me, I'm trying to understand what you're doing, and I'm trying to figure out where I can help. And especially for the projects that are federally funded, I'm trying to be able to understand how the money is being applied. So go ahead, tell us what you got here.
Go for it, Eli.
Yeah, morning. Thank you guys for taking the time to come here and see what we're doing here. Sorry, gotta get used to it.
That's all right.
But yeah, we have also with us too is our HPD guys, our lieutenant sergeant, those who with the program.
Okay.
So our part as with IHS, as we partner up with HPD, we provide the case management part.
No, I'm sorry. Do you work for IHS?
Yeah, I
Okay,
work for
so
IHS.
Institute for Human Services.
So I'm the coordinator.
Okay. And
for-
Institute for Human Services is a long-time nonprofit dedicated to communities in need, IHS. And Anton was telling us earlier that in his responsibility, he works with community service organizations. So you're where the effort, the money, they meet the road. You're actually carrying out the service right here.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's the cool thing too, because the partnership with HPD, City and County, has really been a blessing because of the services we've been able to provide for those who are unable to go into shelter right away. We've been able to provide shelter, and then from here, while they're here, our goal is to either get them into emergency shelters or transitional or to permanent. We've been blessed and fortunate to even house people straight from here. So a lot of people coming in, we even service people who from the mainland just coming here, things don't go as planned. We've been able to pick them up and help them get relocated back to the mainland. So the case manager part, what we do is help with documentations. There's guys who, because it's rough on the streets, that's one thing they lose is their bags. They have no identification, no social security card, birth certificates. So that's one area that we help.
Right.
Another area that we help with is the financial benefits. So they come in with no money, nothing, no kind of benefits. We help apply for SNAP benefits, Social Security, SSDI, stuff like that. And then also we help with treatment plans. Some guys coming out, they just had it, just don't want to be on the streets anymore. They want to clean up. So a lot of the blessed part about it is HPD's been bringing in guys who wants to get cleaned up.
Right.
So when they meet with our case managers and our team, our job is to refer them either to treatment, get something going on with them, and then also we deal with guys with mental health. One thing that we also provide is mental health services with our clinic. Would they be able to get an appointment with their psych, get some evaluations, and then from there, some of them haven't been on medication for years. We're able to get them back on medication and get them to be stable. We also have...
So I'm sorry, just the bottom line is for what you're doing here is for the folks that are in tremendous need, do not have housing.
Yeah.
Whether they haven't had housing for a few months or in some cases years, as you already pointed out, this is their first stop.
Yeah.
This is like you just try to get them off the street and set up the next stages for them.
Yeah.
So this is not permanent
Yeah, this is not...
housing. This is not permanent anything. This is just
Yeah.
where you start.
Yeah.
Congressman,
Aloha.
nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. Hi. Aloha.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
How are you? Aloha. How are you? Aloha. How's it? Aloha.
Good.
Thank you.
Hey, morning, Daryl. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing there?
How are you doing? Good. Thanks for letting me talk to you just a little bit.
Problem.
This is kind of something I do every once in a while when I'm home from DC, and I try to get out in the community. This particular thing, we call it Cruising with Congressman Case. So, you know, I get in the car with, in this case, Anton. We talk story. We try to understand what he's doing. We talk story with people like you that are on the front lines. In this case, obviously, we're focusing on housing and homelessness and people in need. And so for me, it's understanding what's happening in my district, trying to bring the ideas back to DC. And this is federally funded. So, you know, I'm trying to do a little oversight too from my appropriations committee, which is where all the money comes from. So I can tell the stories back there about what's going right and not going right. So what do you think? I mean, and by the way, you know, a couple of years ago, the last time they had a point in time count, I actually joined the point in time count. So we were under the freeway right over there in the camps, and this wasn't here at the time. Your fellow officers, you know, were there with me. We went out early morning, so I tried to understand it on the grounds. But I don't know, what's your assessment overall of, you know, COVID, first of all, the impact, homelessness, is anything changing because of COVID? And then how is this working here?
Well, I think COVID's definitely had an impact, especially more so last year, and during the time that this was converted into the post phase of Mono. But obviously, you know, since that time, it's kind of subsided. It still impacts our operations with the way things are set up here. Anybody displaying symptoms and who test positive for COVID, we actually have an isolation area, and we have created protocols and safety measures in place. You notice some of the tents, the way they're set up. They're tents within tents. If you see how they're housed in there, so you know we create space and COVID mitigation measures in place to kind of protect everybody. But really, a lot of that subsided, and we're you know getting back into kind of not quite where it was pre-COVID, but we're starting to normalize our operations, and you know we'll still taking all those measures into account. But
have you seen any increase? Has there been? I saw some statistics during the middle of COVID that the population of folks that were unsheltered had actually not increased substantially. In fact, I saw one stat that said that our veterans homeless population had declined, and frankly, when I saw it, I didn't know what to make of it because it didn't make sense to me. Do you have a sense of whether you know, we have a larger population now, or about the same, or?
No, I just based on what we see, and I'll let Sergeant Marico kind of speak
So
to the
the
details.
numbers actually it's still pretty great and stuff. So is those, when we have those over here, is those who want the help, right? So a lot of times, you know, there is a lot of people out there that, you know, we can offer assistance and help, but sometimes they don't want it, right? So at one point when we were here, we had almost close to 100 people that was actually at our site over here. So numbers kind of subsided. We kind of changed the arrangement and setup of everything is, and then we kind of had a lot that we wasn't getting too many transitions because of the COVID and restrictions at the shelters. But now, you know, we're having a lot of transitions, so we are getting a lot of people that we're getting help too. So it's a great program.
I think the biggest impact we had was just the slowdown in our ability to place people in the shelters. That's what caused the numbers to really spike, you know, throughout the early and middle stages of the pandemic. But you know, since that time, a lot of the shelter spaces have opened up, and we're seeing that numbers go down because we're pushing people out back. You know, like I said, not quite where it was pre-COVID, but it's flowing again. You know, so we're getting those who want it. We're getting them.
Yeah.
Getting them the shelter
Right now, the
spaces they
Paulo
want.
site we just opened,
Yes.
and that one is starting to increase daily. So numbers up to 30.
Do you think that's because there is a growing population in the
that's
West?
part of it, but I think you know, the community has that need. I think we're opening up more, working together. I think better. So taking in more of the referrals. I would like to see us canvas more for people instead of us just waiting for them to come. So we need to go out there and reach out to them ourselves or with our partners. And I think that'll make even a bigger difference. Because I just think a lot of people are not going to come. We got to go out there and get them and say, hey, let's go. We got something better for you.
Yeah, that's what our new core program for, to go get them. But I just want to just say how important the HPD has been to the whole process here. They've been integral to it in many different ways, and they've been the essence of why this thing has worked so well. And we're going to continue to work with them in a partnership in that role. But there are multiple ways you can exit out of here. So they do send people to shelters, but they also through IHS they're able to get people into permanent housing directly from here, supportive housing. Also return people to their homes, whether it be on the mainland or neighbor island. And I don't know what the magic sauce they have, but they're very good, and the numbers are significant on people that return to their families, right? And that's a great reunification process. Something got broken at one point, and through the relationship building they've been able to reunite them. So, I mean, the work that these folks, HPD does with IHS has just been really good, and so we're really looking forward to continuing it. This unit, though, has been here for some time since COVID, right? It kind of locked it in. We had the tents, then we went to the pup tents because of COVID, right? And now we took those pup tents and moved them into the tents, so they don't hold 18 anymore. They hold like 9 or 8. But that being said, the design for it was to move every 3 months to a different part of the community. And so we have one that's rural, and that's been moving every 90 days now. Right now it's in the Waipahu Cultural Center. This one, they're starting to break it down, getting ready to move at the end of the month to go to Old Stadium at the first of the month, which really gives a different dynamic to it, and we can go and move around.
So this one's going to move?
It's going to move.
Okay.
We're actually in a process of, as you can see, there's some empty spots.
We got to clean it up.
Yeah.
We're going to be completely moved by next week, Friday. So
Why would you move? I mean, what's the reason for moving? Like, I guess I think about this one as kind of the central one, and then you've got mobile ones that are going around the island. Why move it?
Originally, it was never meant to have been a permanent base. It became that because of the pandemic, basically, and it was the ideal location. It still is, really, but during that time, our footprint grew and it's become a somewhat permanent establishment. And I think now with the pandemic lifting, especially with this park, there's just a lot of activities that are beginning to flow through here with the public, and this kind of
it's a tough space. People are going to start having their,
the parks, they
festivals.
want their park back.
Yeah.
Activities. We have the canoe races. We got the Sound Culture Days. We got there's a lot of stuff that happens here, and they kind of lost that because of COVID. And the reason why we stayed was because of COVID. They really, the parks were shut down, so we were fortunate to keep the place, because this place is a really good area, centralized area for the island.
Right. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you was, if I recall correctly, one of the understandings of this program is HPD also commits to accelerated patrolling and interaction around here, 2 to 5 miles. I think that's what I recall.
Radius around,
Radius, and so sometimes you hear communities going, "Well, I'm a little worried about that," but you guys are saying, "Hey, we'll take care of that concern, right? We'll make it safe for the community."
Yeah, we still continue to maintain that our responsibility with that. I mean, if you think about it, in the 2 mile radius from here, you're gonna have at least 10 officers anyway, because that's their beat assignments in the 2 mile radius. And officers, that if there's anything that happened, the response time for anybody else, really quick anyway too. So it's and that goes for anywhere we set up. We have a lot of officers.
And that's one of the selling points of the program with the community boards, especially, is that we bring a security aspect to it, because not only do you have an officer assigned to the site 24 hours a day, there's always somebody here, sworn personnel, here to assist as well as to provide that security.
You mean besides HPD?
Besides the regular officers patrolling the area, we have one officer that's assigned here. And then what ends up happening is we, within that 2 mile radius, will extend our outreach efforts. We'll as well as enforcement within those areas if need be. And then one of the byproducts is that the site becomes a place where the patrol guys often will make stops. They'll do their report writing and stuff like that. So you just have that increased police presence that just comes with the program wherever we are. And usually where we go is someplace where you got a lot of bad element potentially, and then wherever you got a large police presence, they're going to displace. They're not going to want to be there. So that's one of the things that we kind of bring.
All right. Well, anything else I should know going back to DC about anything you're I had a really good conversation yesterday, actually, with your new Shopo president.
Oh,
So I got it in spades about recruitment and retention and pensions and deferred pensions and trying to bring people in and keep them in the force. But I mean, particular to here, anything I should know about housing and homelessness
like for me personally, I think this is great. I mean, we got to keep continuing our efforts in reducing homelessness, but there is a need for the mental health crisis people too. So over here, like when we're screened out, some of them we can't service them because obviously they're really mentally ill. But I think if we can step up something and reach that population, it will have even a more effect on, because those are the guys, officers are really having a hard time. EMS has a hard time. Fire everybody has a real difficult time with them. The fire is because they're so unpredictable, right? We don't know what they're gonna do. Safety is an issue and all that. But I think if we can build something similar to this, but with that population, I think we would even have a very good impact.
I think that a lot of folks, in my experience, a lot of folks that don't know that much about the overall challenges of homelessness don't realize just how much of it is mental health.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know until I, tried to understand it. So these are not folks that, just can't find a job or that kind of stuff. They actually have very severe challenges, mental health challenges.
Right.
If you don't solve those, you're not going to solve the overall issue. And I think we're a lot better on that with unsheltered folks nowadays, but we still got a ways to go. So I appreciate that comment.
I think that's where CORE comes in, and that's going to
also for law enforcement in general, the training in dealing with these people in those agitated states, that cannot be ignored. That needs to be continuously looked at and improved. Our department does well with it. We're like honestly, we started earlier and we just built on it. So I think we're in the right direction, but I think we just got to keep that going.
Okay, well, thank you. I better keep going, otherwise I'll stay here for another hour talking story. But I always schedule a certain amount of time, and then I just blow through the schedule right away and mess it up for my staff, and they're all challenging.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. We will help on the other stuff too.
Oh yeah, right on.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So nice to get out and see things personally rather than treat them in the abstract,
Right. The police are, HPD is integral to making that thing
Yeah,
work.
well, that was a first class, talk right there with HPD, and you could see that they were really into it, and I mean, for them, this is critical to their mission as well, is to get treatment or help for the people that.
Welcome to our main base. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Congress.
Yeah, good to see you again, right?
Yes.
Seen you many times, I think. Didn't I always see you out at the food bank and no? Well, we've met before.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. How's it? Aloha. How are you?
Let's film outside. It might be a little late.
Okay.
Versus in our. We cooked the bed bugs over here. That's why. Yeah, right here, right? Yeah. Sure. So we used to operate this building with the Department of Health as well during COVID. So this was the temporary quarantine and isolation center where we were caring for people.
Oh, okay, that's it. I haven't been here, I don't think. Okay.
So this was it, and it just got turned over to South Island Treatment. So when you look at IHS overall, we have 18 different service sites, and this is our family, children's, and single women program, and then we have a variety of other programs here.
What's your role here?
So I'm the Children's Program Coordinator here. So what we do basically is we provide early learning. So we partner with HPU nurses. They come in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and they provide early developmental learning, and we look at their growing charts and see where they are, and if they need any developmental help or additional help, we will outsource it and find somebody to help us. So we provide them with 0 to 4, some playtime and stuff, just so they can have some space to learn and grow and walk around or crawl or be in the bouncers like that. We provide after school care as well, so we do tutoring, and we have partners from UH and all of that come in and help us with tutors, and we do activities and games as well. Yeah.
How many children here today?
We have 27.
27 children.
And then
And how
15
many?
families.
How many?
15 families.
15 families, 27 children.
Yes.
Here, this is our Taking Root program. It's part of our employment program. So what we do here is, there's 3 legs to our employment program. There's Taking Root, where we teach agriculture and teach people how to grow their own food. We also have our New Leaf program, which teaches people vocational trainings in cleaning, landscaping, and building maintenance. The third thing we do is Health to Work, which is our job readiness program. These 3 programs encompass the employment program. Through this, we really try and teach people self-worth. We try to motivate them. And more importantly, we try to help them find their purpose, right? If they have those 3 things, then they're going to be successful in taking the steps and progressing out of their situation.
Self-worth, motivation, and purpose.
Correct.
Keys to success.
Correct.
You're teaching.
Yeah, I'm the agriculture educator for the program.
Ah.
So yeah, we have a former student and a new student here with us today.
So they're learning about how to
transplant today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing now. Transplanting some arugula.
Arugula. Is that what you got going? You're in the program now?
I am the former student.
Oh, you're the former student. Okay. That's beautiful. How long do they stay here?
Like about 3 months, and then we go out.
Right.
After.
So most of the people that are here will stay the 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, cool. Very nice. Well, thank you so much.
My name is Kaya.
Kaya?
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Punchbowl.
Punchbowl?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I saw this. I thought maybe from the Big Island like me.
No. I'm from Papakolea.
Papakolea?
Yes.
I know Papakolea. You don't have to say Punchbowl.
Yeah, I'm from Papakolea. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
All right.
For this week, so for me it's an opportunity to get around, understanding what people are doing.
Such an honor though to
Well, it's an honor to talk story with you too.
Oh.
And I got to figure out where you get your shirts from because I like that one. Where is that?
Tanoa.
Tanoa, what is that? Is that a local or is it?
Yeah, it's on Ward. It's local, Polynesian. It's a Polynesian shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
On Ward?
Yeah, it's on Ward. So it's called Ohana. It's like a big store. You can go in there, look at all the Polynesian stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I learned something every day. Not always what I expected.
Right. Well, with all your busy schedule, you can,
I'm always looking for good aloha shirts.
Oh, yeah?
This is 84 units, Y-Tech project, serving 60% and below of the area median income. This is the main entry that you just came through. This is artist work by the people who live here.
Huh.
And we have a variety of different type of artists, from A to Z, I guess you could say. The management office is right here on the right. And we've got 3 staff in there right now that are really involved in the operations of this building. Marian Gushigan over here is our Director of Real Estate Development for Hawaii. And she worked with Art Space out of Minneapolis to develop this project.
Is the building new? Is it a new building or?
2020.
But I mean, you built it. It's not like refurbished from something else.
No, brand new, opened up in the pandemic. So
today is all federal funding, right? So the IHS shelters use CDBG as well as ESG funding.
Right.
And this is home. So we just kind of wanted to give you
a
flavor as to what it was. A lot of it that we were doing, that we did earlier, was all CV funded as well.
Right.
So your CARES Act funding.
Right.
And so we wanted to just show, that was a good investment that our congressional delegation gave to us.
Right.
We got over $40 million.
Off of the home one?
Yeah. So we got 14.4 in 14.4.
Thank you.
CBG CV and 24.8 in.
Does the funding? Where does the funding come into play here? It
it was in the construction phase.
I see.
So we worked with Kevin
So federal funding helped in the construction of this?
Federal funding, so it was part LIHTC, part home, part city.
And LIHTC, just for the people that are listening, is low income housing tax credit?
Yeah, and then City Affordable Housing Fund that we set up in 2007.
So I guess one of the things I'm just trying to understand is, kind of tracking through the continuum of what I saw today from HONU to the transition to the health specific and then to permanent. So would those folks come here?
Yeah, so that would be the next level up. So good question that you have. Right now we have 12 units assigned for Housing First. We are working with,
So reserved
for Housing First. They do create some challenges, so we're working with them on keeping a homeless preference, but not so much Housing First. Because Housing First is more chronically homeless, and going from, this is a 60% building, 60% AMI building, more like normal families. It's trying to get that blend correct. Right. So the EAH as well as Art Spaces said they want to emphasize homeless families, maybe not so far on the ISPEDAT spectrum that it makes it difficult and there's clashes between residents.
Right.
So it's still keeping a homeless preference.
Okay.
Working with them as to where in the ISPEDAT scale that might be.
Yeah. So let's just take somebody that had come through off the streets, through HONU, through the transitional 90-day, and they were looking for the next permanent housing. Would they wouldn't get to a 60%, would they? Right off the bat, or they might?
They might get into one of the Housing First units, and that's a good question. When we're at IHS, they have a housing department. They have 115 Housing First vouchers that they have to their to their disposal. The other people that we have is U.S. Vets and Catholic Charities. So among them all, we have about 375 to 415 when I count the state vouchers as well.
Okay. So 10 of them are here, Housing
12,
First. 12 allocated to Housing First. And they would be an obvious first step for the folks that had come through the program. And then the rest of it is, I guess, affordable housing for folks that are not homeless to start with. Okay. Okay, well, we started this morning with Anton Krucky, a director of Department of Community Services, City and County of Honolulu. We started at his office in Kalihi Palama. We went to HONU project in Kehi Lagoon. We came through really a centralization of a number of projects to help folks with their housing in Iwilei. We came through Chinatown, and now we're in the middle of Kaka'ako, high-rise Kaka'ako, and I don't think there's another place that would tell the story about the cost of housing in Hawaii. And so it's we've kind of been through the entire gamut. We've tried to think about this from start to finish, from the folks that are literally out there on the streets under bridges and other places without homes at all, without recourse, to what we're trying to do to help them all the way through. And for me, it's been eye-opening to understand, number one, how many great people are involved in this effort. Number two, to try to figure out how it all fits together from start to finish. And number three, of course, from my perspective, the federal funding. Anton, your team gave me the summary of CARES Act funding alone, which was about $14.4 million to our community development block grant program that you use in a number of programs, to what we call HAPWA, which is people living with HIV/AIDS, and Emergency Solutions Grant at $24.8 million. So we've put a lot of money out there from a COVID perspective, and that's before we even get into a non-COVID environment. So number one, thank you so much for showing me all of this today, and the incredible team you have at not only the department, but Institute for Human Services and people like Catholic Charities and U.S. Vets who are taking care of our homeless population. So what do you I guess first of all, do you think you told me everything that I need to know going back to Washington about, and by the way, this is just one of your areas of responsibility, right?
Right. We have workforce development. We have so much going on. But when you convert those funds into the city strategy,
It's really about how can you help someone on the street make a decision to get engaged. And at that level, you know, the federal funding for HONU, CORE, those kind of programs are there. And then you go, if you can get somebody to engage, do you have a capacity to deal with that? And we looked at shelters and how you're funding shelters, and then we look at affordable housing, how you can get people into housing. So really, you look at those funds and how you deploy them, and then I try to convert them into a strategy. So we really appreciate it very much.
Is there anything we need to be doing at the federal level that we're somehow off course for, excuse me, or that we need to, you know, do a mid-course correction? Or sometimes what I find is in the big marble buildings in Washington, D.C., where we try to get things right, we don't always tailor them correctly to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Are there areas that you think we need to work on to kind of get the federal programs to really apply to Hawaii a little bit more?
Well, I wouldn't want to point something out like that, but what I would say is some of the conversion from like HUD to Hawaii are difficult. And some of the, you know, timeliness and some of those things don't convert for us well. But I will say that the local office tries to do those conversions for us. So we work closely with that local office.
Yeah, no, we invest our local federal offices all the time in what I always call cultural translation, which is trying to explain to Washington, D.C. why we need things to be done a certain way. And the reverse also, sometimes it's down here, which is why Washington insists on it being done a certain way.
Yeah.
So
when you push a lot of money like we've done in the last few years, we're going to have to manage that well, because, you know, you put it all on these service providers, they gear up, right? But then we're not going to have those funds in 2 years. And so how do you get projects done that then later your budgets can manage? And that's what I'm trying to look 2-3 years ahead for that kind of thing, because that's what's going to happen when this bell curve flattens out.
One of the things I'm really happy about is that, as we discussed along the way, was that federal funds are not always dedicated, in fact usually are not dedicated to building buildings. They're dedicated to the programs themselves. And in the CARES Act funding, the other COVID funding, we departed from that in very specific circumstances. So to learn that you are benefiting from those particular funds to build actual buildings to take care particularly of the health needs of our highly challenged populations is, to me, gratifying.
Yeah, we had 3 closures in December in that funding, so that was about $9-10 million in that. Very much appreciated, and that's a case where it gets built. And then we can later look at the programmatic
right,
stage.
Because it's tough to build and get into programmatic. That gets expensive. So I guess the last thing I would ask you is, hey, like I asked you at the very beginning, you know, you had a long and successful career, and Mayor Blangiardi talked you into the public sector for the first time in your life, even though you've been engaged in the public sector. What drives you still?
Well, you know, if you can work in a way that helps somebody else find their success, that's gratifying to me, and that's what I work at. And so I'd like to look back at this adventure of my career and say some things are there that weren't there before. And I worked with a lot of great people, and they found their success.
I couldn't say it better than that. And the people that Anton is helping and his team are the people in the most need in our communities. And so it's really a pleasure to partner with you. Thanks for spending the time this morning. I learned a hell of a lot, and I hope you did too.
Mahalo, Congressman.